So friends, from this class we are starting our journey to understand the organic chemistry. So the first point we have to understand in order to understand the organic chemistry is to know about the electronic structure of carbon. So the first point or the first view which drives us towards or drives us into the electronic structure of carbon is the distribution of electron in carbon atom. Let us study that. Outside its nucleus, carbon has 6 electrons distributed in orbits of increasing distance. That means, suppose carbon here, it has a nucleus inside a carbon atom. Here it is the nucleus of the carbon, and outside its nucleus it has 6 electrons. Carbon, how many electrons does it have? It has 6 electrons. Now you see, those 6 electrons are distributed in orbits of increasing distance. That means they are outside the nucleus, there are orbits. Obviously, according to the Bohr concept, we know that orbits are circular in nature, though we actually cannot say that orbits are precisely circular in nature, but from the Bohr concept it is quite evident that orbits are circular in nature. Okay, so we are going according to the Bohr concept. So what it says, outside the nucleus of the carbon, the electrons are distributed in the orbits of the increasing distance. What does it mean? You see the nucleus of the carbon, if this is the nucleus of the carbon, this is the nucleus of the carbon. अब देखिए nucleus, you see the distance at increasing distance we have some levels, right? We have some levels, and in these different levels the electrons are distributed. The different levels at increasing distance from the nucleus where the electrons are distributed, these levels are called the orbits. Thus, there we have electron, there we have electron inside a carbon atom, right? So all the electrons in the carbon atom, we have 6 electrons which are distributed, see, which are distributed, okay, at the distant areas or the distant levels from the nucleus. The very next point is this orbits are called energy levels. These orbits are called energy levels, and each of them possesses different energy. Each of them possesses different energies. So these orbits, these energy levels, according to Bohr concept, we are on the Bohr concept, we will discuss the quantum mechanical aspect of it, but before that first we have to describe it in the context of Niels Bohr, what he did with that electronic configuration of carbon and how he described the chemistry of carbon, right? So what happened, from the nucleus, all the 6 electrons are distributed in increasing distance, okay? Those orbits in the increasing distance are called the energy levels, and each of them, they possess different energies. So the first orbit, this is the first orbit, it has certain energy, suppose E1. The second orbit, it is the second orbit, it has certain energy like E2. So according to this concept, what happens, as the distance from the nucleus increases, as we go away, far away from the nucleus, the energies of the orbits increases. That means the energy E1, that is the energy of the first orbit, is actually lesser than E2, that means the energy of the second orbit. That means as we move far away from the nucleus, the levels at which all the electrons are distributed precisely, their energy gets increased. You know, from the first orbit, you see 2 electrons are distributed in the first orbit, and in the second orbit 4 electrons are distributed as it has 6 electrons. So the first orbit, if it has an energy of E1, and the second orbit if it has an energy of E2, so E1 must be less than E2. That means as the distance from the nucleus increases, it shows the increase in the amount of energy of that energy level. So electrons are distributed in different orbits which possess different energies. Obviously, as we move far away from nucleus, the energy levels, the orbits becomes more energetic. I think this discussion is clear about this. So as a whole, what happens? As a whole, the story is like this. There is a nucleus of carbon, and as you know, in some distance from the nucleus, not in some distance, the distance is considerably high. If we see at that distance, all the 6 electrons of carbon, they are distributed in increasing energy levels. Those increasing energy levels are called orbits. Those increasing energy levels are called orbits. So that was the story described by Niels Bohr, and from Bohr's quantum mechanical model we get that kind of electronic configuration of carbon. बट कहानी में ट्विस्ट अब आता है जब क्वांटम मैकेनिक्स में थोड़ा एडवांस्ड है, यानी कि व्हेन वी सॉ एडवांसेस इन द क्वांटम मैकेनिक्स, स्पेशली फ्रॉम द लॉ ऑफ हाइजेनबर्ग्स अनसर्टेनिटी प्रिंसिपल एंड द वेव मैकेनिकल मॉडल प्रोड्यूस्ड बाय एरविन श्रोडिंगर, वी कंक्लूडेड that these type of particles, electrons, they cannot further be considered as particles. In Bohr quantum mechanical model we saw what the electrons were considered as particles. Bohr के quantum mechanical model में electrons were considered as particle, and by considering it as particle we distributed them into different energy levels.